Hi there, and welcome to Studio SN, your place for card making, rubber stamping, and paper crafting tutorials. My name is Sara Naumann, and I'm so very glad you're here. Today I want to share a fun watercolor resist effect, and I think you can see this here on the front of my card. As I'm tilting this, you'll see the shine of that gold embossed card focal on there. That is not only providing some really beautiful texture and shine, but that embossing is also providing a resist to my watercolor mediums. Now the watercolor that I'm working with today is in a pen format, so these are really a lot of fun to use, not only for coloring large areas like the background, but also getting into some detail areas there too. And these are the Nuvo Aqua Flow pens from Tonic. So I want to share with you a few tips on using the pens, and then we'll get into the coloring of the card. So I'm going to move aside my card and bring in a piece of smooth white cardstock. Now this is a pretty sturdy weight cardstock. You can also use watercolor paper as well. Now the three pens that I'm working with are from the Spring Meadow collection from Tonic, and I have the Lilac Blossom, this is the Fresh Green, and then I have the Soft Rose over here as well. So these all come together in a set, and of course there are lots of other colors available too. Now the pens are a really handy format if you like to do your art journaling or your crafting on the go. If you like to take your watercolors with you as you travel, this is a really nice option. So when you get your pens, the first thing you'll need to do is remove the little green ring that will be right in between the top part and the barrel. So you just need to pull off the top part and then pull off that ring and then pop the top back on. It's very simple to do. And that's just in the packaging and a way to keep everything safe and from leaking. Now the pen itself gives you lots of different options. You can see that it's got a nice broad part of the tip that goes into a very fine tip. That means that as you're holding this, you can add a nice wash of color on your cardstock. You can also, if you're holding the pen at a higher angle, you can get a finer detail. Really just depends on how you're holding your pen. You can go quite fine. You can also do some really small dot effects on here too. Now, because this is a watercolor, if you first spritz your paper with a little bit of water, you can also come in and do some really nice wet on wet techniques as well too. Now there's a little word on here. It's a little bit tricky to see, I think maybe on camera, but it says press, which means that you can press, kind of pinch the barrel of this, and you can get a more deposited color on here. That's great if you like to work on directly onto your craft sheet as a palette and you just need a blob of that watercolor on there. You can just squeeze this and it will come right out. So you've got lots of different ways to use your watercolors. I like to use them for coloring in my stamped images. So let me move in my stamped and gold embossed card focal so you can see how pretty that is. Now this is from a stamp set from my friend Julie Hickey, and this is her Friendship Blooms collection. So I've got a nice big card focal element on here, really fun floral with some words in the background. Also some accent pieces and some really small embellishments here too. And what I love it when manufacturers do this and they provide a project ID on the back. So Julie is also providing you with a little idea on here too. Just some inspiration. So these are the Friendship Blooms stamp set from Julie. And I'm just going to color in the flower. I'm going to start with the Lilac Blossom, and I'm just going to very carefully color this in. And you can notice that I'm able to get that resist effect right away. You'll see how that gold is acting as the resist to my watercolor medium. Now I can work at more of an up and down angle as I'm coming in around some of the detail portions of the flower. There's some nice kind of a hand-drawn effect with these stamps from Julie, and this is really nice. It gives you a little bit of a casual effect which works beautifully with the watercolor. So come right in here. I don't need to worry about going over any of that gold area because of course that is the resist part. So let me just come in here. I've got just another petal to do. So you can see how this can be done beautifully in lots of different colors of embossing powder. So I'm using the gold, but of course this would be pretty in silver, and would even look really interesting with a white background. So I have my blossom on here. Then I'm going to come in with the fresh green and add my leaves. And this is a really nice, bright, sort of spring green, really cheerful color. I love that I don't have to do my own mixing with these watercolors, but of course, if I wanted to, I could do some color mixing, especially between the sets. So you can always come in and do that as well. So then I have my leaf and my leaves and my flower. Now I could leave this as it is because this looks really pretty, but I want to add a little bit more color in the background here. So this is where the soft rose is going to come in, and you can see I can really come in at quite an angle and just sort of scribble this color in. And again, I don't have to worry about going around any of those words because they will act as my resist. And I can even go over the stem as it is, and then angle this a little bit more as I'm coming around the detail areas, just to make sure that I don't go over the lines there. Now Tonic does recommend that when you're storing your pens that you store them upright, and this says actually on the barrel of the pen, and I talked to them beforehand because usually we crafters are always told to store our pens and markers lying flat so that we don't get ink puddling and pooling at one end or the other. But Tonic confirmed that that is correct, what they put on the side of the barrel. So you'll want to make sure that you store your pens upright, and that will keep them in good condition for a very long time. Okay, so I'll just come around here and add a little bit more color. You can see how this comes together quite quickly. And there we go. Now because I've got that nice fine tip and I have a really sweet little border going around the outside edge here, I'm just going to come back once again with that lilac and add a little bit of a border around here and just fill that in. I love this sketchy effect. And along here, and I'm also going to do a little bit of spritzing with some water on this. So I'm not too terribly concerned about getting it in all of those detail areas, because when I spritz this, I'm also going to get a really nice soft effect. So got this all on here. Now what I could do is leave this as it is because it looks quite nice, but I wanted it to be even softer and more blended. So I'm going to come in with my water mister and give this a spritz or two. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I have a tissue or a cloth on hand, and that is going to be my blotter. So I'm going to unfold one of these and just give a few spritzes directly onto that stamped and watercolored area. And just press this down, and then I'm going to lift, and you can see that I've got a little bit more of a subtle effect, particularly in the background area here too. Now if I wanted to come back and add even more color, I can definitely do that. If I wanted to add even more detail around on the centers of my leaves, I can always come back and do that. Or if I wanted to intensify the color in some of my petals, I can do that as well. So because it's a watercolor, you can always come back and rework that, like so. And then all I need to do is let that dry before I put it on the front of my card. Now I can heat set this with a heat tool to speed up the dry time if I wanted to, but it is not necessary because it can also air dry. So I'm going to move this aside and bring in my finished card, and you can once again see that beautiful shine of the embossing on here. I've kept the rest of the background of the card really quite simple and quite pale. In fact, even with the paleness of the card focal, I just wanted it to be a really soft design all over. So I've taken some sheet music and knocked back some of the black with a little bit of white acrylic paint, just brayered that on there. I've got some white doilies on here, and then I've got some gold embroidery thread going across the back. Now, when I added my card focal on here, I did it with foam mounting tape so that I wouldn't get a bump from that gold embroidery thread. It's not too thick, but I don't like it when it sort of bows over the sides on there. So this is how you can create a really fun watercolor resist effect using the Tonic Aqua Flows. Thank you so much for joining me today on Studio SN. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated on the very latest stamping and card making videos. In the meantime, please feel free to learn more about paper crafting techniques on my website, saranaumann.com. Thanks again, and I will see you next week.